speakers today. So we have Shannon and Cassandra. So I'm going to go ahead and put put the meeting over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Tracy, and also Judy. Appreciate you. And thanks for everybody who is joining us for this Savvy session. As they mentioned, I am Ms. Shannon Paul. This is my friend Cassandra Brashier from Avila Wealth. And we are very fortunate to host a financial health and wealth show here based in the Twin Cities. But you can listen to us wherever you find your podcasts. And we sound wonderful in your earbuds. And so we're very happy to be partnering with Savvy Ladies again for this edition of this Savvy session. And when we were talking to them, one of the subject matters that they brought up that had been just conveyed by a number of you who have been part of getting some great information from Savvy Ladies was the concept of communicating your financial goals or figuring out your co-financial goals with family. And I know Cassandra and I were talking about this, and one of the things I always think is interesting when you're having that conversation about discussing things with your family is how just inherently complex that situation can be. I mean, I'm a single mom with a special needs kid. Cassandra is a wonderful mother and wife. And remind me how many kids you have again? Is it 4 or 3?
Or
Four.
feels like more some days.
Right, right. But we're both in that situation that we're business owners, we're career women, we're mothers, but we also have our family that we're dealing with, and how do we interact with them? Exactly. And so we understand how complex the situation can be. So we're going to go through a couple of broad stroke conversation starter ideas as you are navigating the concept of finances with your family. And then we are also open to any of your questions. And so you can either put those in the chat and we will go through them as efficiently as possible, or at the end of the session, we will try to leave time. If you would like to get your voice into the room, we can go ahead and unmute some mics and get your question into this room in general. We also want to remind everybody that all of the securities and advisors services offered today are from Harbor Investment Inc., member FINRA SIPC, for my friend Cassandra over at Avila Wealth. And then we have a variety of information from Savvy Ladies as well. So as Judy and Tracy mentioned, if you need specific advice, we do encourage you to get set up with a financial advisor of your own, because you do deserve that support. So Cassandra, when we were framing this, you were very kind enough to come up with some general just buckets of conversation topics that we're going to go through today. So do you want to go ahead and bring up that presentation, and we'll just kind of walk people through what we're going to try and cover today, and then also just allow them to help do this as well?
Yes, we will do that.
Absolutely.
Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, because this is one of the biggest and we talked about this a little bit last time too, I think, but and I don't probably have to tell most of you this, especially if you've been in any kind of a relationship and tried to have a conversation about finances, is that there can be a lot of emotions tied to finances. We can have a lot of opinions and views and even emotions that can kind of bubble up when we talk about finances, because money can be a very personal topic to people. And whatever your experience has been with money, or the way you were raised about how you handle money, or maybe that there just never was money when you were being raised, or maybe now you feel that way, that there's just not enough. And you're just trying to learn how to be in a position where there is more available and more that you have access to and to work with. So we could be all across the spectrum when it comes to our experience with money and what our relationship has been. And so even if you've had a very difficult time with money in the past or right now, there are things you can do and ways. And so today, what we're really going to try and address is having some of those conversations around money and addressing those conversations in 3 different general categories. Of course, we have an hour. Shannon and I love to converse and talk about all these things that we could talk about for days probably, but we're going to talk about first, how do you bring up money and talk about it with parents? Because some of you may have parents. I know even Tracy, you have some things that you're dealing with parents, right? So Shannon, I know we've had conversations about parents. So parents first, then we're going to talk about more lateral, like if it's a spouse or a relationship or a partner, how do you talk about money and bring some of it up? And then we're going to talk about with kids.
Right.
How does the conversation kind of come about, or what are some things you could do and teach kids about when it comes to finances? So we're going to try and cover a broad spectrum of a few different areas.
Right. And we do have a question in the chat right now. If you want to go ahead and chime in for everybody that is joining us today, just in general, how is your relationship with money? So do you think that you're on a thumbs up trajectory with it, or are you kind of on a thumbs down with it? And so if you want
So
to
you're
go ahead and
saying,
put
you're
that in there.
saying what's your trajectory, not necessarily where are you at.
Yeah,
But you're
well, so we
saying
can
where
say,
are you headed?
correct. I think that if we want to do that, where it's like, or, we can do it a couple of ways. We can also go, how do you currently feel your relationship is with money? Do you think you have a positive relationship? So let's start with that. So what do you feel is your current relationship with money? Do you feel like you're in a positive relationship with your money, or in a negative relationship with your money? And we'll continue to cover that as we go through. So thank you for having me clarify, Cassandra. So.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can get everyone to a point where they feel like their trajectory is on the upward, right? Is in a positive.
True.
So wherever you're starting from today, we want to help give you some tools. And I know that's what Savvy Ladies is all about anyway, is really just giving some empowerment and education and tools to women. So love that. So those are going to be our topics today. And Shannon, I'm glad you have a pulse on the questions and things, and we'll keep going through those. So let's start with parents. We love them. They brought us into this world, right? Or they helped raise us, even if you don't have your biological parents. So you were raised by someone. And so we've got ideas about money.
Right.
And now if you're at a point where you're trying to help your parents or help people, maybe it's even other people or friends or elderly people that are older that you might want to be helping with some of these things, how do we start these conversations? I think one of the best places to start is to be clear even on what you're trying to do to help them out. And so maybe that's a challenge too. Maybe you don't know where to start.
Right.
So some of the things that can be helpful to try to have conversations with people. We're doing some of this too with my husband's parents right now too, is it's just trying to help get to a point where whatever their wishes are, whatever their intentions are, whatever they want to happen, we just want to try and help them put those things in place.
Right.
So I think if you can maybe start a conversation with someone with laying that out, because I think sometimes it can be uncomfortable where you might think that someone thinks that you're trying to make sure that you get some of their assets or that you're taking care of in some way. And I think if you make it clear, that can even just help you, I think, with the conversation to show that you're just trying to be helpful.
Right.
You just make sure whatever their wishes are, that you can help make sure those get carried out.
And I always, when we have these conversations, one of the things that we've mentioned before is not only encouraging them to do it, but sometimes if you are wise enough to already be connecting with Savvy Ladies and looking for this, and you already have some people who are talking about their journey is in more of a positive relationship with their money, you might have to, as odd as it sounds, be the one that models these behaviors for your parents. And going, well, here's why I already started this journey. Here's why I already have these things in place. Like this morning I had a conversation, because I don't even think I told you, Cassandra, I lost my driver's license when I was traveling, I think. I don't know where it's at. So I had to go get another one. And so when I was at the DMV, they were like, hey, it shows that you have a living will. And I said, yeah, I have all that stuff in place. And the person at the DMV mentioned that not many people have that set in place yet. And I said, I really just wanted to get it done on behalf of my kid. And so that my family didn't have to worry about it. My sisters didn't have to guess what my wishes were. So maybe, this is a good opportunity for you to also get something off your plate and then model for them and go, really, it's not from a position of I'm trying to scam you. I'm not doing it from a position of, what can I get out of this? This is in your best interest as well.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great place where you could, if this is something that some of you are working on right now too, then you're learning about it as well. And it can be just a great segue to offer, would you like me to help you with this? I'm figuring this stuff out as well. So I think even gently asking, would you like me to help to set up an appointment with an attorney that you could talk with? Would you like me to set up a time for you to meet with an advisor? just even offering to help get the ball rolling. Sometimes I think getting something in motion, because if we're stagnant, it's hard to even take those first steps sometimes. Right. So even just setting up, like a lot of attorneys will do an initial consultation that doesn't cost anything. And so even just getting something like that in the works, whether you're part of the conversation or not, maybe you even drop them off, right? I'll drop you off and then I'll come pick you up afterward. Anything like that, I think those kinds of things can help just to nudge or push people. Now, maybe the relationship is such that it has to come from someone else. Right. So, that there's always that possibility too. But I think pushing a little bit on some of these topics and conversations can be helpful. One thing, and we're going to talk about this too a couple different times, but one thing is even just to help people go through their beneficiaries. And that can be a tough thing for someone, especially if they're a little bit older. It might be a little bit difficult to actually find that information. If they have life insurance policies, it would be in there, but it's possible that beneficiaries were updated after someone got their policy. And so it would be most beneficial to actually make three-way phone calls with people to look at who's their beneficiary on things, to make sure that when they're sitting right there with you, they can hear who it is and have that peace of mind that they know who are the beneficiaries listed on all the things that are important to them. Now, another thing that can be helpful, if someone's not going to do an actual estate plan and things, even if they do, you want to make sure that the beneficiaries are in line with whatever their estate planning is, because that's another disconnect, that if people have a trust or a will, if they put things in place and they said, this is who I want everything to go to, but if their beneficiaries don't reflect that, their estate planning will have no bearing on where it actually goes. Because if their life insurance says it will go to someone else, that's where it will go. Right. Whatever is listed on the actual contracts, the life insurance, on the investment accounts, on the bank accounts, if they put beneficiaries on all those things, that's where it's going to go. So that's why it's so important not only to do estate planning and things, but also to make sure beneficiaries are updated. Even just doing a beneficiary review with your loved ones can be really, really beneficial and fruitful for people.
Mm-hmm. It's also really valuable that to look through some of their documents if you have the opportunity, because unfortunately we live in an incredibly sketchy world, and there are a lot of people that, unfortunately, especially as our sketchy people get more advanced, that we want to make sure that we as good caretakers and caregivers are in a position to kind of go, here's how you can not have your elder friends get scammed, and to put them in a situation of empowerment where they know that they have a proper support system and the right people to ask for advice and the right people to run things past in a way that's not taking away their autonomy, but definitely is helping them not fall prey to some of those scams and those people out there that are really just horrible criminals that are preying on our people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think even just having the conversation so that you know what their wishes are, that's half of it. Right. If they're willing to share it, if they're willing to share what they'd like to happen, because that just makes it that much easier in the end. And then one other thing, if people are willing, or maybe they have it already, some people are very organized and have everything all set up, and some people aren't. But if you can at least find out, do you have a place where all your important documents are? If you're going to be the person that will likely have to pick up the baton if something happens to them, it's really helpful if you can know where do you keep your things, just so that it gives you a place to start. Right. And even to encourage people, like there are a lot of books and resources that people can use to fill in all their important information, like even having contact on who is their attorney, who is their advisor, who are people that you're going to need to be reaching out to if something happens to them, as well as passwords. Passwords for things are so helpful if they can have them listed in books and things, or have it listed on, in something that they keep up to date. And especially a password for their cell phones. That's really helpful, because a lot of times people's cell phones have a lot of helpful information and ways to connect to things that they have out there.
Right. Now, before we move on to the next general topic, I did want to ask you, Cassandra, your advice. Let's say that we have a less than freely communicative relationship with our parents. But you know, from two perspectives. One, we still want to help, but two, sometimes, especially for a number of people who may be watching, maybe they are in this journey of trying to get more financial independence, to change their relationship with money, and they maybe have a difficult situation if they try to communicate that to their parents or something. So on those two fronts, what are your suggestions if you're having those kind of conversations and it might be difficult for them to talk to their parents about their relationship with money?
That's a great question. And even I have a psychology degree because I think that relationships and human nature and things is fascinating. But when it comes to money, the thing I'll say is obviously when it comes to anything with family dynamics and parents, sometimes there's just difficult dynamics. So I know you can do as much as you can do, but at the end of the day, people still can do whatever they're going to do. And we don't have any control at that point. I really just think that coming from a place of, if you can come from a place of just humility, and I just really want to help you with this, I think that's probably your best bet, which you maybe have tried that. And I know sometimes that still's not going to work. So I don't know. There's no silver bullet, I guess, to trying to help people with some of this stuff. But I think what you can control, like you said, Shannon, is if you get your own stuff in order, maybe that would even be enough of an example to be able to prompt someone, even if they don't take your help, maybe they will allow someone else, or maybe they will initiate it on their own, but maybe they just have, whether it's pride or whether it's something else that they don't want your help to do it, but maybe it's enough of a nudge that it does prompt them to take care of it. So I think what you said, like I said, I love that you say, even just being an example, sometimes that says a lot.
Thank you. All right. So do we want to move on to our next bucket as we are cruising through this hour?
Yeah, there's just a few more things to talk about quick when it comes to parents is that, or again, could be friends, could be family, other relatives, but people that you're trying to help. If they don't have any estate planning for any number of reasons, it's great if they can at least have a power of attorney document and healthcare directive in place. That's extremely helpful. So that the power of attorney just is, who do they trust to take care of any kind of financially related situations that might arise that they might need help with, whether it's because they're incapacitated or whether it's just to have someone else help them out. And the healthcare directive is in the case that someone needs to make health decisions on their behalf. But those two things are very, very helpful if they can have those in place at a minimum. And check with your state. I know in Minnesota, I think you can just print the documents off, get them notarized and have them. You don't necessarily even have to, at least in our state, right, go through an attorney or pay to have it done. So check with your state what the rules are around that. But that's something that could be very easy to get. You could even print them off and give them to them, to be able to take care of. So but those are just a few things. And just remember too, even without estate planning, all their wishes may be able to be done just by having the proper beneficiaries. And some things that get overlooked sometimes are bank accounts, because we don't always think, well, did I put a beneficiary? Maybe you opened your bank account 40 years ago, right? I mean, so check with your bank account if you have a TOD, a transfer on death listed, or if they do. Same thing with even on a property, you can put a TOD or a transfer on death. And then that's a way that things can make sure that they pass to where you want them to go.
Right.
So hopefully that was somewhat helpful. Again, I know sometimes family is the toughest.
It is.
The toughest to work with.
You said sometimes. I'm going to say oftentimes. Like oftentimes. It's like, I love you, but you are so complex. Right.
Often. Yes. So don't feel like you are alone. If your family is challenging to have these conversations with, you're probably in the majority. That's the majority of us. So let's talk about with a partner or a spouse. Again, this can be really, some of my husband and some of our most difficult conversations early on still were about money.
Right.
Because I had a very, very strong opinion and view on how we should handle certain things. And so did he. And they were very different views. And it's not that either one was absolutely right or wrong. We just both had very different views on how to handle certain things. So again, if you're having emotionally charged conversations that even end in tears,
Right.
That I think that's very common in relationships when it comes to money. So, Shannon, I know we've talked about this, but my husband and I, we do conversations and talks to engaged couples. And now many of us are maybe beyond that point, right? Married, maybe some divorced, maybe whatever the case, maybe married multiple times. All I will say is the sooner you can talk about money, whether it's before you're married or even today. Today, great. Today is sooner than tomorrow. So if you can talk about money and start having those conversations, the sooner I think the better. If you're not in a relationship now and you're going to be going into any new relationships, I think it's great to start having those conversations early. Shannon, you talk to me about sometimes conversations you have on dates.
I am a big fan, and I say this all the time. I make better life choices because I am friends with financial advisors, family attorneys, and holistic health providers. And so I am, and yes, I make jokes about it, but I'm serious. Like the date she's talking about is I was out with this guy, and I said, if I ever get married again, I am definitely going to have a prenuptial or anti-nuptial agreement. And he said, he laughed. He's like, oh, I don't have enough money for that. And I'm like, well, you don't have a second date. That's how I feel about this. But I do believe that it does help you go, this is important to me. And if they don't want to talk about it, then I think that's a good pink flag to go, maybe we're not on the same page, because this is something I want to talk about. And if they go, oh, you're a buzzkill about love, I think it's actually the opposite. I want to get all of the business out of the way so we can let the hormones take over. So let's go ahead and have the conversation and see if we're on the page. And I wish that, I'm one of those people that I'm only once divorced. But I wish that I had been in a position, or if I could go back and talk to engaged Shannon, that would have been a conversation I would have had, because like many of us, if you look at statistics, my ex-husband and I think very differently about finances, and it did come up often and aggressively. And so, that's, to the point now that all of my finances and things that I set up for my son, none of them involve my ex-husband, because I know he doesn't think about finances in a way that I agree with. So when I'm setting up future finances, it's here's who's going to keep track of my son's trust. Here's what's going to do that, because I don't get along with my ex that way. So figuring out a way to have these conversations, and then trusting your instincts of going, yes, I've done the work. Because you clearly are that person. If you're here with us today or you're watching us in the replay, you've done the work to educate yourself on this. So you deserve to be able to continue to make these decisions and feel empowered about it. And if you're partnered with somebody that says, oh, you're being silly by caring about this, that's gaslighting and not true. So you do deserve to have this advice and to continue to get it. So that's my thought on it, Cassandra. So yes, I love, but I also like keeping track of my finances now that I've worked so hard to get to here. So,
and that's a great place to be.
Right.
It's a great place to be. So I think just, again, starting those conversations, and if you haven't had the conversation with your spouse or your partner about how did they grow up with money, I think just listening to their history and experience will be very insightful for you, because that will help you to understand more of where they're coming from. And especially because some of us were raised where money was very scarce. And if that was the case for them, and if there are any issues with money, when people are raised with a scarce mentality with money, it can go like one of two ways. Either that's their comfort level, then, not that they would say consciously that they like that, but that's what they're used to. That's their normal.
Right.
And so that's how they will handle money, in a way that it will always be scarce. And so if that's a situation that either you or a partner or spouse are dealing with, it's helpful to know that. Now, people could flop the other way. And I've seen people become very, very conservative with their money, where they don't want to spend any of it because they're afraid of having a scarce situation again, where they don't have enough. And so again, if you're in a situation, or if you feel like you can't spend money, or you're not comfortable spending money because you're afraid and you have a fear that you won't have enough, those are good things to be aware of, both for yourself as well as for a partner or a spouse, because then you can at least know where you're starting from. And like Shannon and I have talked about this, we talk about it a lot. You may not be on the same page as a partner or a spouse, but it's helpful to at least know what page they're on.
Exactly.
And what page you're on, because then you may be able to at least figure out a way where you can still have a good relationship and still figure out how to work together with money. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of those things, but just knowing where you're starting, where you're both starting, what your past has been with money and how you both feel about money. Those are really great conversations to have, because it can just give you a lot of insights.
And
And talk about where you struggle.
And it's as reasonable to talk about that as you do other things at the beginning of a relationship, like what love language do you speak? Having your money language and knowing what language you speak in that is equally as important, and sometimes even more, because it might lead into some of those other things regarding what your love languages are. So absolutely valid to have these conversations.
And I encourage you to talk with your spouse or your partner about where you feel like you're struggling, because sometimes they may be able to help you in some way, or you might together be able to come up with some solutions that could help both of you and help you to feel like you're working as a team and doing some of this together. So I think talking about who might be better suited to take care of bills and to take care of just monitoring bank accounts, monitoring some of those things. Maybe you have joint accounts. Maybe you have a joint account and then you have your separate accounts. I've seen it work in a lot of different ways for people. And I think figure out what will work best for you, whether you divide up the bills or whether you both pool a certain amount of money into a joint account where all the bills come out of. Again, whatever works for you is the right way to do it. I wouldn't worry about what's the right way. Figure out what's right for you. So, and then talk about with the investments. One of you may be better suited, or maybe both of you want to do it together and have conversations and work with an advisor together, but maybe one of you doesn't, right? So look at where people's strengths are. Now, at the end of the day, hopefully one of you will be willing to take care of the bills. One of you will be willing to address and look at more of the finances and general investments. So and maybe it's just you. And if it's just you, then that's going to be the person, right? You're the default. So hopefully we can make it at least somewhat interesting, and Savvy Ladies has a lot of different resources and things that can help hold your hand and take you through a lot of that as well.
Right.
And Cassandra, I'll jump in and say that what we've seen too is we really want every woman in the relationship they're in to understand those investments.
Right.
Because it really becomes what we have seen and what I have seen in my time at Savvy Ladies, and what we continue to hear is investing is the game changer.
Yes.
So no woman should abdicate the investments to a partner. They should always be involved in the investments. They should always understand what the investments are. So even if you don't know it today, learn.
Yeah, I think that's excellent.
Right.
And it might seem overwhelming initially, but it is, it is learnable.
Yes.
You're able to learn it and understand it, especially if you're working with people that can make it understandable. Because there are some people that can talk over your head and it's not understandable, but there are ways to make it understandable.
Right. And we also encourage you that even if you are successfully in a relationship right now, the other reason why it's so important for you when we're talking to women is that statistically, you will eventually need to know this anyway. We are all, all of the numbers say that we are most likely, if we are in a standard partnership with a man, to probably outlive them. So it is in your best interest to know how all of this works. And you have resources, and you don't have to know it all overnight. There are very just accessible ways for you to incrementally increase your knowledge. And then you only have to know enough to ask the right question and to get the right support and scaffolding in advice. And I remind people all the time, especially when Cassandra and I are doing the radio show, that it's a matter of, the Kardashians have financial advisors. You deserve one too. Wherever you are, wherever you're living, there's somebody that can help you. And you're reading one of these stories, or you're going through an alphabet soup of investment options. There's somebody that you can sit down with that'll tell you, this is what a 401k does. And here are the different plans that are in it. And here's how we can help you allocate those for to maximize your investment opportunities. And so you deserve to ask, and you're not dumb for asking and seeking advice from a qualified advisor. I told myself that 2024 is the year of me taking advice from my advisor. So I bug Cassandra a lot more than I used to before I make a decision.
That's good. No, look at how many celebrities honestly don't have things together.
Right.
So and didn't do any estate planning and didn't set things up.
Or
and
didn't pay their taxes and now they're in trouble.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So anyway,
Mhm.
I think a lot of people can have a lot better things in place, whether you know it or not, than many other people out there. So, but I think, like you said, Shannon, women, not only do we statistically live longer, but women really, we are the market. We are the market that we make the majority of major financial decisions, whether you realize it or not.
Mhm.
We are the ones. And then women, more and more, as I speak with people and talk with people, whether it's couples or just women who are single, they are increasingly the breadwinners of the family and have really grown in their income and just being savvy in so many ways. And so I applaud women in general for that, because there's been just so much progression and growth, both in careers and in all areas where women are really thriving. So I think that's wonderful. Um, and once you've talked about your past, about money and things, it's nice and it can be fun and it can be a great exercise, whether it's just you or whether you have a partner or a spouse, to just do a little bit of dreaming and
Right.
talk about what are some things you may want to work towards together. I think that can be a really great exercise, because then when you start to take some of those next steps with your finances, talking about a budget and talking about some of those things can be some really great first steps together. Even
Right.
if you've never done it and you've been together for a long time, it can be a really great process. But having a purpose to do that, which is where some of those goals and dreams come from, can make setting some parameters with your finances, it gives it a purpose. And
Right.
then you're not just doing it willy-nilly and saying, well, why should we sacrifice over here? I don't know. I don't see why we would do that. We enjoy this, right? Well, then sometimes it's easier to make those decisions and say, I absolutely want to sacrifice here because some of these goals are very important to me or to us.
Mhm.
And so I think that's where starting with some dreams and goals can be wonderful. And then you want to make sure that you build in spending money. Well, again, whether it's just you or whether you have a spouse or a partner, it's so important, whatever that number is,
Right.
whatever that number is, that you each have freedom within the budget, that you're each going to be able to spend and use a certain amount, that you don't have to be accountable to anyone else. And that's just something that you do and have fun with. And whether you decide to save it or whether you decide to spend it on a monthly basis, it's wonderful to have that. And that gives you that freedom still within the boundaries and things where you can still be reaching towards those financial goals, but still have freedom and flexibility within it.
Right. And you go back to when you were talking about maybe growing up with that scarcity mindset. It's if you can dream, as you mentioned, and then start having a priority for what you're doing as you're making these decisions, then that's how you can kind of start transitioning into that abundance mindset, because you're able to go, yes, I saved, yes, I invested, but I also left myself room for this spending money for the thing
Yeah.
that I want.
Right.
And you got to be very intentional about that. So, Judy, did you have
Right.
something too?
I had a question to ask you, Cassandra. What is your thoughts on, you hear all the time in marriages that it's also good for the woman to have like her own credit card, stuff in her own name. What are your thoughts, and how do you have that conversation with your partner about what's yours, mine, and ours, and what should be in my own name? I've heard questions come up, more when she becomes a widow and she recognizes it's always been in both our names, and then it becomes hard for her to get credit in her own name. And she's now age, she's a senior citizen. So are there any recommendations you might suggest?
Well, in that case, Tracy, now if someone's on a mortgage, right? Because more often than not, I think both people, if you're married, right, a lot of times you're both on the mortgage. That now, if there's no mortgage, that's different, right? But that would be one way you'd be building credit already. So if you had joint credit cards, that shouldn't be an issue, right? Where it wouldn't be necessarily just in your name. If there's no mortgage and you have no other credit out there except for a joint card, then maybe that would be a reason to have one in your own name as well, so that you do have that. Now, if you're on a mortgage already, then you are still building credit in your own name, whether whoever's paying for it, right? Out of whatever income that's out there. So I think it kind of depends on the situation with people, and whether you have a car in your name, that would be, there's a number of different ways that I think someone could still be building credit, even if they have joint credit cards.
And I think that the older we get, the more likely you are to, just let's just say it this way. We are currently seeing a number of societal shifts, where there may be less advantage to having everything be joint, in comparison to way things used to be. So now there used to be a lot of opportunities out there where if you were on a team or a joint or something like that, maybe that was to your benefit. And now that's not always the case, because it depends on your partner and what their credit looked like and what they did. So again, back to the conversations that Cassandra was suggesting at the beginning of talking about your spouse or your partner, it may not be in your best interest to be joint on everything that you have.
Yeah.
So,
And it depends too, right? If you're married or not, and what all the circumstances look like.
right.
So yeah. So I think it can be circumstantial to a degree, Tracy, on what people look at doing. And if you have joint things, if you have something, now if you have a business, right, you might have a separate one that you would have separate anyway. You might have a vehicle, or you might have other property or things that would be in the business name that would not be tied. So anyway, there's lots of different scenarios, and I think it just depends. But
And
yeah.
Cassandra, I just want to help you real quick, because I know you have, since you're sharing your screen, that's actually Judy, our friend that's been asking these questions. So I know
I'm
you
sorry.
can't see her. No, I just was letting you know.
We're a team. We're
Yeah.
a team, Tracy.
So if
and I.
anybody was
Thank
watching
you.
in the replay,
my bar is covering that part up, and I'm afraid to move the bar because
no, you're right. That's I knew that. That's the only reason I brought it up.
Sorry,
So if anybody
Judy.
was watching was watching in the replay, I was like, nope, that's Judy. So I just wanted to make sure that they go.
Just to share with everyone, I always had everything joint, and it made me really think about that. And so I wanted to get my own credit card. So
yes.
So it made sense. I never had it in my own names since I had gotten married. So now I have my own, just as a safeguard sort of thing. So it's something out there for everyone to consider and think about. There's no harm in having your own credit card. Just make sure you pay it.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, and that's one of the things when it comes to relationships, because, and we've talked about this already several times, but because we both can, two people can have very different views and opinions that can be very strong. Try to let go of the need to do what's right. What's the right thing to do, in a sense. Not that you don't want to try to do your best, not that you don't want to try and seek out counsel and advice. What I would say though is, at the end of the day, you may need to look at your relationship and your situation and your family, and just look at what's going to be the best thing or the right thing for us.
Right.
What's our best path forward? And it may be different than what an expert would maybe suggest, but it still might be the right thing for you. So I think you can take people's advice and take it into consideration. But I always recommend trust yourself, though. At the end of the day, you know your situation better than anyone else, and you will be the one ultimately responsible for your decisions and for your path. So always be confident in your own decision-making process, even though you can seek advice and take counsel from other people and take that into consideration. So we know finances can be very, very high emotions and things. Right. So we have a lot on that when it comes to that. But so that's why I would recommend be creative. Sometimes it just takes some creativity, some thinking outside the box, and taking the advice, but putting it into a plan that you can feel good about. And then I usually recommend too, look at what's the worst case scenario. If you're going to make a decision and you're feeling a little bit nervous about the decision, what's the worst case scenario if you make that decision? And I think just knowing what the worst case is, and then saying, okay, I think we could figure it out, or I could handle that, even if it's the worst case, then go ahead, right? If you feel calm and at peace about it, and then go ahead with it. So those are just some things. And then double checking your own beneficiaries. We already talked about it when it comes to parents, when it comes to other people you're helping out. Same thing for our situations. It's good. Anytime I do reviews with clients, I always like to double check, these are your beneficiaries. Is this accurate? Because even in 6 months, that could change sometimes. Either someone might pass away, a relationship could change, whatever might happen. So you just want to make sure on a regular basis, at least on an annual basis, can be really, really good to just check who you have as beneficiaries, especially in the cases of second marriages or divorce situations or remarriages or just marriage in general, where maybe you had a sibling or a parent listed and now you're married, or vice versa, right? Or now you're not married and you may have had an ex-spouse listed. You just want to make sure all those things are up to date.
Right.
And the same thing like we talked about with parents and things, you want to have healthcare directives and power of attorney documents, whether you have a full-fledged estate plan in place or not. Those are a lot easier to put in place, those documents, and just to decide on who do you want to make health decisions for you. Maybe it's your partner or your spouse, maybe it's not. And either way, it's okay, but it's just putting someone down that you trust in those two categories, both with your health and then with finances.
Right. Cassandra, can I also mention something? One, thank you very much for Tracy putting in the chat that make sure you're checking your beneficiaries at least once per year, if not more. Another thing that you've mentioned before, Cassandra, is trying to start these conversations in a less emotionally charged time. So figuring out a way to be able to start these conversations where they can be in a time where you have the emotional calories and the bandwidth to be able to have a civil conversation, not from a position of anger, lack, disappointment, any of those things. So as much as possible, if you're in a position to go, hey, we are just going to chill on a Friday night, and instead of watching Netflix, let's talk about these things, where it's not in a point where you're like, now we started it from a position of arguing. It's a lot more likely to be able to meet and come to some sort of understanding if you can start the conversation then.
Yeah, we should emphasize that a little more too. And don't feel bad about needing to pause.
Yep.
Pause and say, let's come back to this. I don't feel like it's productive right now. Let's let our emotions calm down. Like you said, try and make it, even set it up for success by trying to make it a more fun time. Whether you open a bottle of wine or whether you have some tea or coffee or do it in the morning or do it at a time where you both will be in a refreshed state of mind versus at the end of a long day or the end of a long week that was already trying. Try and set it up at a time where you'll have your best opportunity for success.
Right.
I think that's a great plan. And maybe even say, and once we get through this, we're gonna do something fun, or we're going to have something else to look forward to after the fact, so that there's also that. So sometimes those are things, I mean, you know yourselves better than I do. So ways that you can, like Shannon, you always say, I like to gamify things. So if you can make it a game for you, right? Then that's going to be more fun.
It's like Monopoly, but with our actual money. That's how it works. Exactly.
That's what it is. So let's segue now to children. And this it could be adult children. It could be smaller children. It could be nieces, nephews, grandkids. It could kids in general. I mean, kids are at a point in their lives where there's a lot that they're absorbing and learning throughout. And if you have older kids, it may be a little bit more challenging sometimes if they're at a point where they're parent deaf, right? Where it doesn't matter if you have the best advice in the world, they may not be listening. They may not want to hear it, right? And they might take that same advice from a stranger over you, right? But if you have younger children sometimes there are things you can do to help them. So just like we're all raised with certain ideas about money, it can be nice to try to start learning so that you can also teach your children some healthy things and things that they can do about money. I think one of the biggest things is to try and help teach children resourcefulness and independence on themselves, so that they learn that they have the ability to earn money.
Right.
Instead of thinking that money comes from asking or just being given money. If they can learn that they have the ability and the control to acquire money, and they can learn that early on. And then if you can couple that with teaching them good, responsible habits and management with money, that can really set children and then adults up for great success. And you don't necessarily have to be great at handling your own money to be able to teach that to kids.
Right.
Certainly it could be helpful, but there are things you can do. Now, maybe you have children that are not at a mature enough place, and maybe they will never be if they're in certain circumstances, right? Or if they have certain situations where they would not be able to handle their money well. But for a lot of kids, they can, and they can be taught to handle their money well. So being able to give them some guidance and things and attach their efforts to them earning money, even if it's little things around the house that they can do, even from a very little age, they can start to earn money from their own efforts. And I think that is such a great thing to be able to teach kids, because our kids knew from early on, they did not ever ask us for money. They would come to us and say, Mom, Dad, what can I do to earn some money? What can I do? And that's where the conversation would start with our kids. Now, we're figuring it out as we go too, like everyone else, right? So it's not like we have all the answers, but we did, that was one thing that we really tried to drill into our kids, that they would never come just ask for money, that they would realize that they needed to earn it somehow. But that has really spurred on some great conversations and some great creativity. And all of our kids have lots of ideas they talk to us about wanting to start businesses and do different things, because they know that it's their own efforts that will create an income for them throughout their life. And so I think these are things that if you can have those conversations and encourage that in kids, kids are just naturally creative. They just are. So if you can fuel that creativity toward earning an income and towards ways that they can earn money, I think it's so neat. It's so neat to see with children.
And this can also help diffuse that for our friends that might be in a tighter financial straits. And if you're going, I feel like I'm always telling them no, I'm feeling like I can't. It's, well, how can we make this a collective effort where we're trying to earn an opportunity to do that? And so having them understand, especially in the world that we live in now, where we're a very card-based society, where, you know, even if you are technically spending money out of your checking account, it's very rarely in a tangible format. So it's very difficult. And we talk to parents, you know, often, that it's like, well, how do I, you know, for Cassandra and I, at least it used to be, we could have $5 and go to a store and have to do the math. Now the math isn't on anything tangible. You don't run out of, in their opinion, money that's on a card. They don't understand that. So trying to figure out a way to have that conversation of, no, this card is the access to it, but there's actually a finite amount of something someplace. And so the more you use this card, the more that finite amount of things are depleted, and eventually you're not going to be able to do it, or you don't have enough of those things that we access with this card to get the thing that you're wanting to do right now. And that's a hard conversation. So it's not, no, it's not right now. We can't do that now. Here's how we can get there though, and trying to explain that. So
I think having those conversations with kids, and again, just teaching them, listen, if you would like this thing, let's brainstorm some ways that you can earn some money. And again, it could be things around the house. Maybe there's a family business, or maybe there's a neighbor that has a business, or maybe it's trying to earn money in their neighborhood or through other means, or just figuring out a way to start a business where there's something that's needed, right? Doing a needed service, or creating something that they market, that they sell, whatever it is. I think kids, again, there are endless ways that kids can earn money. Our son even went around like cleaning out garbage cans for people. It's like, who wants to do that, right? But he was willing to do it. So he was able to earn money. He's gone door to door selling his toys when he's wanted to earn money. Anyway, our son is the most driven of probably all our kids so far.
He is a very young entrepreneur.
He's incessant sometimes. It actually can be exhausting, where he'll come to me so much, Mom, what can I do to earn money? And I'll just think, I don't even know. I don't know right now. Like, give me a minute. I'm in the middle of this. But anyway.
We will Shark Tank your idea later. So just wait.
Yes.
So.
And Cassandra, I'm gonna jump in and share with you and Sandra that I heard a wonderful story that I wish I had done with my children, but someone told me that when their children would get extra money or money for like birthdays, or like a sweet 16, or, you know, those big milestones as you're growing up, you know, friends, some family, mostly grandparents, but would give cash. Again, I'm going to date myself by like 20 years because I don't think people give cash any longer, but
grandparents do. That's when my kid gets it.
Still give that 20, right? But if that is an opportunity also to say to your child, not to spend it, but to invest it and buy one stock, like you can buy a stock option and watch it. And it might be able, I thought that was so clever. And to your point, it could be, when you said gaming, it could be something that interests the child.
Right.
So maybe they were interested in some technology or a game, and they wanted
to buy Roblox stock. Go buy
Correct, or a
Roblox
Disney
stock.
stock or something, and they
Yeah.
got one share. What does that mean to them as they start watching it, giving them that sort of education? So I just
Right.
wanted to share that because it's something I didn't do and I wish I had.
Yeah.
And Judy, let me share something. Cassandra, your mom does one even better where she doesn't even give cash. Like she, so do you want to share everybody what your mom gives to all of her kids and grandkids for their
It
presents?
depends. It depends. But she gives them silver.
Yes. And life insurance. So she's not giving you
Well,
cash.
okay.
She's
So
giving you silver and life insurance.
she gave all of us life insurance. Yes, she did. Where
Mhm.
permanent policies that she had put money into and funded it. And
Wow.
then on our graduation from college, she would give us the life insurance. Correct, Shannon. I didn't know if you meant the grandkids, because she gives the
Oh,
grandkids silver. She
No.
gave all of her kids life insurance. She
It was
lets the
both.
parents do their life insurance. So we did our kids. Anyway, so yeah, so when I graduated college, I always would tell this story that my friend got my roommate got a camera. I was so jealous. I thought, oh my gosh, that's such a great camera.
Mhm.
And my mom was like, okay, you get this bill every month now because now it's yours. I was like, what? But then I realized, okay, there's money in the policy, so that's pretty great. And I could buy a lot of cameras with that if I needed to. So I get it. So
Right.
I did appreciate it, but I didn't understand it at first when I graduated college. I thought, what?
Right.
Anyway.
Very cool. Very cool.
Oh yeah.
So I
Very
think
cool.
we're getting up to the hour. I
Right.
want to be
So
mindful
this
of
is
all
the
of our.
last thing that I wanted to go through then.
Yeah, please.
Was just then what do kids do? So I would just say whatever, how it, like you said, Judy, help them to figure out how to portion it out.
Right.
For our kids, we have them break it up where half automatically goes towards savings. 25% is long-term investing for retirement. 25% is more midterm. What does midterm mean? Midterm could be like maybe they buy a car with it down the road, or maybe it's for a house for them, or traveling, or college, or whatever it is. But we have them put it in something that'll be liquid for them, that they could tap into it whenever. And then they have, for them, 25% they can spend on whatever they want, and then 25% they give. They can give to however, whether it's church or other different nonprofits or however they feel like they want to be generous. So that's what we do. It doesn't have to be that. There's not a right or wrong, but I think helping kids figure out some saving, like you said, Judy, whether it's specific investment or stock, or whether it's saving, even if it's in a bank account initially, just helping them to start saving and building up money. And then also giving them an amount that they can have freedom with and that they can spend and things. Right. That's what we've done. Again, there's not a right or wrong, but I think helping them to figure out how to manage money and for you to help them with that guidance early on, I think is really helpful.
So, and it can be very educational for you too, where you're like, okay, I didn't start this early, but what are my options for younger people to do and what would I advise them to do? So it's actually can be really fun for you too as a parent.
Correct. Yeah.
I think it's beautiful that you're instilling in them the, charitable contributions, like be it to their church or to a fundraiser that they are passionate about at their school. That's really lovely.
They really, it's neat to see them. They are the ones, sometimes they'll bring money along and they will, whether it's, they'll pull it out and give it. I've seen them give it to homeless people at times. Yeah. I've seen them have it at church where they brought their own money and it really gives kids a sense of pride. Right. It does when they can do that on their own. And this is the last thing I'll leave you with kids is that we always told our kids when they go to a birthday party, if they want mom and dad to buy the gift, then the gift is from mom and dad. They can still bring it, but it's from mom and dad because we bought it. And if they want it to be from them, then they have to use their own spending money and their own money to do that. And every single time they have opted to buy it themselves, they want it to be from them. And then they are very proud of being able to bring it and give it to their friends. Anyway, so I think there's a lot of little things we can do with kids just to give them that sense of responsibility and ownership in that whole money process from early on. And I'm sure there's 100 other fantastic ideas. I wish we had time for everyone to share things, but that's really the information that we had for today. So if anyone has any questions or if there's anything else, Judy or Tracy, that you guys want to chime in with.
No, I think this was great information. I will add for kids that there are several different options to even get them like debit cards. You can do an app called Greenlight, which I did with my kids, and that taught them. There's even an investment option on that one to get them learning how to do that. And I also wanted to bring home, you had mentioned that I had been going through some things with my mom, who we did have to move her to assisted living, and she never had these conversations with us. She
Right.
outright refused. And where it put us was, okay, now we're dealing with somebody who is argumentative, but now we have to get her to do a living will. Now we have to get her to sign off on power of attorney, and really get her wishes, which is something that she never provided for us. So have those conversations now, and
Right.
have them as early as possible, because you don't want to be in this position. It was not pleasant for any of us involved, and it really would have just been a simple conversation 10-20 years ago.
Right.
So I've now had the conversation with my children. We're all, and my husband, we're all on the same page. So yeah, life learning experience, have those conversations and have them early.
And as we continue to wrap up, I also want to remind everybody that's joining us today and everybody that's watching that we encourage all of you to continue to find appropriate support as you're making these decisions. And it's great that you're part of this community, and understanding that there are other people that can be there to support and scaffold what it is that you're doing on your process. And everybody does not deserve access to what your hopes and dreams are. If you have people who are not supporting you, that are just poking holes in all of that, you do not need to continue to share all that information with them, even if they are someone that might have been your stereotypical people that should support you. Everybody gets to build who their support system is and who their family is and what are those things. And sometimes you're like, okay, that's great information, but I'm not talking to my mom anymore about my financial goals because she doesn't think the same way as I do, or I can't talk to my ex-partner about this. And that's okay. You don't have to have these with everybody else, but you can build your community. You can find your support team with the wonderful advisors they have here and people like Cassandra. And you deserve to get to people that can go, no, I understand where you're going and we want to help you get there, and you're not crazy. And that's what you all deserve. You're not crazy.
100%. Yes, they well said. That we at Savvy Ladies, we always say, build your tribe, build
Yes.
your people around you. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be your family, your friends. I've relied heavily on my friends in the past few weeks. So
Right.
So yes. So thank you both so much. This has been wonderful. I know that we have some lovely comments. That
Thank
this was
you
phenomenal.
for the blue
Shannon, your hair
hair.
is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. I've always
Thank
wanted
you.
Shannon's hair.
Yes. Thank
So,
you.
yeah,
I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. Don't forget to send any information that you would like into, or any questions that you would like into our helpline. We are so thankful that you were here, and